introduce yourself and talk about what you're doing with these simple questions about privacy. So we have like a lot of concerns going on with data and what companies are doing with it. So can you just give us an overview of what your company is doing with privacy, and are you adapting also your privacy policies regarding to the different countries' regulations? Please, Zach, can you start?
Yeah, of course. So I guess first, thanks to WalletConnect for having me here. It's a really exciting conference. And maybe just like a bit about Paxos, for those of you that are less familiar with the company. We're a regulated blockchain infrastructure company focused both on building out the custody infrastructure to bring like mainstream financial services companies like PayPal, Mercado Libre, Interactive Brokers into the crypto market, as well as issuing regulated asset-backed tokens, stablecoins, digital gold tokens on-chain. And so I think, in terms of being regulated, like privacy is just like there's a ton of privacy regulation today. There's a ton of emerging privacy regulation in the market. And so it's really just being compliant with privacy regulation, whether it's GDPR in Europe, CCPA in the US, is just core to how we operate as a business.
I see. Yeah. John?
And I'm John, CEO of StackUp. StackUp is an account abstraction infrastructure company. Specifically, we're developing infrastructure for ERC 4337, the new account abstraction proposal. For us, privacy is often handled in the way that we deal with the way that our customers handle the data of their users and advising them on how to build security into the products that they build. A lot of our customers are smart contract wallets and APIs who handle a lot of personal data, and that is something where people are still getting educated.
Yes, please, Dan.
Thanks for having me here, guys. Excited to be here. So in particular, I'm a co-founder and CEO of Web3 Auth. What we do is we do wallet infrastructure for self-custodial wallets in particular. So when it comes to privacy and data policies, that's also a big thing of what we had to adhere to. In particular, where we try to be regulated on or to be on the side of is to be classified as a self-custodial infrastructure solution for our clients in particular. So it's often, for example, let's say, like I don't know, NeoWiz, which is a Korean company looking to adhere to Korean laws when it comes to self-custody. We help them do that, and data is a big part of that, right? And that's how it pertains to us.
Great. So one simple question regarding convenience. Are there like convenience features that you could not implement in your solutions with privacy very strong policies? Like, do you see what I mean? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I can take that because I think out of the three companies, we're the most liberal here when it comes to or ambitious when it comes to combining Web 2 artifacts with Web 3 structures. So in particular, the base part of our stack combines OAuth, which is essentially passwordless or social logins, with Web 3 wallets. And when you create that link, there's automatically that social link from Web 2, let's say, for example, your Google account or your email, into Web 3. Now, in particular, there are ways to... It's very important to get this right? And even in Web 2, there are ways to mask the identifier that's used to authenticate applications, and ultimately, that's what we depend on. We depend on basic hashing, basic masking of unique identifiers, such that users can log in with an email address, verifiers can verify that, but emails aren't public, or your social link isn't public. And we have that right now, but there are also other things that we could be doing. And I think this is where it gets interesting on the account abstraction layer as well, when you can start creating proofs, ZK proofs, that verifies typical OAuth or JWT verification and verify that on chain. So I think we built one of the first Circom JWT verifiers. It was way too slow on Circom. I remember it taking at least 30 seconds to create a proof in the browser. But I think with Plonks and some of the new ZK stuff and the new circuits coming off, we're a little bit more optimistic with the speeds. But yeah, I mean, I'm dragging on a bit too long. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think from just like my work at Paxos, just focusing, like the main thing that I focus on for the past 3.5 years is how do we make it just like really seamless for just like the largest like consumer finance companies that have hundreds of millions of users today to move into the crypto and Web3 space. And convenience is just like a baseline expectation of these products. And so I cannot tell you how much time these companies spend like agonizing over every error case and how do we make the crypto seamless, just like seamless for our users, a magical experience. And so a lot of what we're building out at Paxos is infrastructure to really just like enable our customers to continue to deliver really convenient crypto, blockchain, Web3 experiences to their user base. And then I think it's just you're in certain ways you're always trying to balance between like the products that your customers are launching, the capabilities of the technology, which with things like account abstraction, they're evolving like incredibly quickly. But really, it's so much of it is just like we see convenience as like we're not going to get societal adoption of these products if that's not in place, and so that's a huge focus for us.
Are you saying right now that the solution that we have for privacy are not really adapted for convenience? You said that the proofs are too long to generate or things like this?
So there are definitely practical concerns when it comes to having complete privacy. On an implementation level, you can get I think a satisfactory level of privacy that goes with GDPR compliance and ISDA in US. But with some of the ZK stuff, it's not as fast as one would like it on user devices.
Yeah, I have a bit of a philosophical view on privacy, which is that privacy isn't about hiding everything you're doing. It's really about having control over what data you provide and make public. In fact, there's a lot of things on blockchains that people want to be public, like I want my ENS to be public so people know where to send me money. I want people to see that I was an early collector of this generative artist, and that gives me social clout. But right now, we do a bad job of communicating to people what choices they're actually making. And I think part of that is that we haven't really abstracted for regular users a lot of what they're doing, so we need to use technical language in order to accurately describe what's happening, but then we end up obscuring for them. And so that's an area where I think we will already get big privacy gains in just informing people what choices they're actually making on chain. And the other is we have so many tools at our disposal that are like pretty new. Stealth addresses, ZK rollups, like privacy-preserving ZK rollups. There's even an aspect of regular rollups where the sequencer may be able to connect all the addresses together, but it's contained within that ecosystem. So I think that this is a problem where as we increase the convenience and usability, we will actually enhance privacy in the sense that we are giving users more control over what they want public and private.
So what do you think is the best way to show to the user like this privacy-oriented feature? Like what should he see at the end? What is the limits? What should be displayed?
I have no idea. It's very case by case. I think that when it comes to using blockchains right now, current users kind of understand that everything they're doing is private. I don't think that they fully understand. Humans naturally don't understand how much privacy they're giving up. They tend to underestimate it. There's a couple reasons for that. One is like we're just linear thinkers. We think we're just giving up one more thing. But really the way privacy works is it's exponential. Like, I don't know if you guys know the game 20 Questions, but it's where you ask, someone would choose, they'd think of a celebrity, and then I have 20 questions that I can ask them. Most of the time, I can actually get who the celebrity is within those 20 questions, But if that celebrity changed, and that's the reason because every new piece of information tells me more because it's already connected to the information before it, which is where things like stealth addresses and being able to, under the hood, be able to disconnect a user's identity from individual actions becomes really powerful. I think that if we don't provide a lot of those things natively within the experience, that we'll be at like a big disadvantage. I mean, it's kind of like security in the aspect of people don't know to ask for it until it's too late. And we have a big responsibility to not just inform, but also err on the side of protecting them more than they probably know.
Yeah. Dak, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think back to the initial question, definitely similar to John. I wish I had the answer here. I don't know like what it is, but my sense is that there's going to be like multiple like solutions to this problem, and I kind of see it as like two of the don't pass go things for any sort of user application of financial services. It's just like one is it convenient and intuitive to the user because like whatever actions they're taking, and second is are we just like protecting users and keeping their assets and their personal data safe. And I just you're not going to get to 100 million or 1 billion users of Web3 technology without satisfying those those two core requirements. And then there's tons of smart people. I think there's ample ways that you can do that, but those to me are just like the two don't pass go things you have to do.
Okay, now a question for you. Like, what do you think about people saying that the networks and the protocols are the ones that should be decentralized and with privacy, and we should build applications on the top of them, which are regulated and much more like controlled? What do you think about this vision of what we are building right now? Then maybe.
That's an interesting question. So I mean, I think it boils down to exactly what we want public and private, as John previously mentioned. Fantastic. It's very forgettable. I had my coffee. Yeah, I think it really depends on what we want public and private, and it boils down to that to answer it, and then it becomes case by case, right? But I can see that some people very strongly believe in that philosophy. So I mean, I think if you talk to anybody at Aztec, for example, right, they would go like, okay, like if you need, there's a school of thought which goes like, you need the base layer to be completely private, because if the base layer isn't private and you aren't thinking about it from ground up, it's too hard to build structures on top of it afterwards. It has to be top of mind. And that's the only way you'll get like a prod application that's truly private out there. Then you have your other school of thought, right? Which goes like, okay, we can always patch it afterwards. And like, we can control what it is and limit what information we're trying to put on. A lot of it, we don't mind being public, and we'll just patch those things which are like very sensitive, specific to the user, and that would just work, right? And I think both these schools of thoughts have merit. And I think economics will be the ultimate decider of this, because it's ultimately what you would choose to build on. If privacy is super important and people need it from ground up, more companies and more enterprises will start choosing to build an Aztec. If not, people will be like okay with every other chain. And that's basically it.
So in terms of economics, where do you see it going then?
Towards all the other chains. I mean, if we take a look at pure economics today, right? Just comparing like the privacy chains relative to the non-privacy chains.
Do you all agree with this?
I mean, I'm not sure I have a strong view. I guess one thing to add is for like privacy chains, I think there's like definite use cases for them. One that comes up a lot is like this idea of like crypto payments, and I can't tell you how many times I've been asked the question of like, hey, like why can't I like pay for Starbucks, like my Starbucks coffee with crypto or stablecoin? And I think one of the reasons is like Starbucks doesn't want like all of their transaction data public on the blockchain because that creates all kinds of corporate issues. And so you could imagine like to really move like that level of consumer activity onto the blockchain, you're going to need privacy embedded into the chains. I think the other side to that coin though is there are tons of financial services regulations that like inherently are not private and require you knowing like who's doing a transaction. And already, and you mentioned Aztec earlier, and I think there's a lot of innovation going on right now of sort of like balancing those two sort of like constraints of privacy on the one hand, regulatory compliance on the other. And I think that, to get mainstream adoption for use cases like payments, you're going to have to like strike the right balance between the two.
So one counterexample I have to that is, do you guys remember Monero?
Yep.
Like, if enterprise, maybe it's just the wrong timing, and enterprises just didn't care at that point, and Monero didn't have enough runway to go all the way. But wouldn't it be true if wouldn't enterprises all adopt Monero?
Oh man, I mean, I think there's good ideas and then there's timing, and I'm just not sure that it was the market was ready.
Yeah, I think also that there's so much more interoperability in the ecosystem than there was back then that it makes it much more attractive to use a privacy preserving solution, especially like rollups on Ethereum, where you can kind of move in between. So I mean, like, and again, it's kind of like that convenience thing. It's like, if it's inconvenient to use privacy preserving tools, no one will use them.
Mm.
And what about the smart contracts wallets working with account abstraction? Do you think it could be a solution for the user to have like more services, maybe also privacy features, without having like to deal with the technical part of it? Do you think that account abstraction can be, for instance, the solution for privacy?
I don't think it is the solution for privacy. I think there are aspects of it where it enhances privacy. For example, you can have gasless payments, and presuming that there is enough activity with a paymaster which will sponsor the payments, you could in theory spin up a stealth address, pay for the transaction anonymously, but still using that other address. But I really think that the benefits of account abstraction on privacy and smart contract wallets is being able to use plain language in describing what we're doing, because we no longer need to use words like nonce to describe accurately what's happening. And I think that that's really the place where account abstraction is going to enhance privacy, rather than being a direct tool, like a cryptographic tool, of which we have like a ton. I mean, it's crazy that ZK rollups is even something that like our universe allows, or like ZK proofs in general. It's crazy that that's something that we've discovered and can do.
Do you think it will be regulated soon?
Traditionally, it's been really hard to regulate math. Over time, I think we're moving too fast for it to really be completely cinched down, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, with account abstraction, I agree a lot with Josh. I think it definitely enables services, but it's not necessarily a privacy enabler. There are other things to be built on top of it to like encourage that. Like a ZK prover for OAuth would be a perfect example of that. And that's powerful. Yeah, I mean, I think account abstraction used to be slightly underhyped, like 2 years ago. And then now I think people see it as the cure for cancer. It's powerful, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't cure cancer.
Yeah, 100%.
I see. When we talk about privacy, we like can also think about adding identity. Like privacy is about putting personal information in what we are in a wallet, for instance. What do you think about adding identity to your wallet, or bringing like identity to authentication methods regarding privacy. How can we deal with this?
So, I think it boils back to a lot of what we spoke about initially, which is what does the user ultimately want public? Does he or she have the appropriate controls and clarity and intuitiveness to get to that point in the UI UX? And a lot of, I think, the tools which are coming out enables privacy, but I think in terms of when we're talking about the user experience, right, a lot of that's unexplored and will be explored, but unexplored.
Yeah, also add that identity is more than connecting my name to my activity. I actually have multiple identities depending on, what role I fill in my life. And there are times where I want to have, like my Twitter identity is, by some twist of fate now my professional profile. Whereas, like my Instagram is, closed off and just like friends and family. And I think we will see a similar thing with accounts and the way that people interact with different chains. And that in many cases, it makes sense to build separate identities. And really, you're only giving up privacy you don't want when you connect those identities in a way that you don't anticipate or intend.
However, there are like solutions who enable us to connect, for instance, your social medias with your wallets for convenience. And does it work?
Yeah, I think, again, to John's point, just kidding. We have tools to be able to make that disconnect, and I think that we have a responsibility to do that.
Yeah, and I think one thing to add there, and I think this is just one of the major areas where Web 2 went wrong, is that this just like trade-off between like giving up information and like what you were receiving in return was just incredibly non-transparent to the user and just has gotten worse and worse over time. And so to me, and I think this comes up a lot, there's this idea of like, as we enable new Web3 experiences for a wider range of users, there just needs to be a fair and transparent value exchange of like, hey, maybe I'm happy to like give up this sort of information about myself if I know the service that I'm getting and I know I'm giving up that information. I think what should be non-negotiable is just that your people are giving up information and just have no idea that it's happening. Because if that's the case, then it's like, what are we actually changing about the way the internet works?
One thing I just add on top of that is, like, in Web 2, the entity that you sign up with and you kind of provide your profile, your information, be it LinkedIn for your professional profile, be it Twitter for social, Instagram for your friends and family, is the owner of that, right? The ultimate custodian and owner. And this creates like huge honeypots of data, which is attractive to hackers, and hackers want to hack this. With Web3, we may have the benefit of, instead of this being huge honeypots of data, to be instead just very user encrypted and user specific. And if permissions are, adverse enough and different enough and truly kind of like self-custodial, then it at least removes this honeypot, which hackers find very attractive at this point in time.
From what you're saying, does it mean that to have privacy, we need to use services that are decentralized?
Self-custody helps with privacy because it disincentivizes hackers, because you have to hack one account at a time.
Yeah, and I think it just, to build on that point, I think self-custody just changes the incentive structure where the companies building applications have to keep like the user's like actual preferences more front and center, because it just, changing products like with your data is so much easier. And I know it's like that, current state is like maybe a lot more theory than practice, but I definitely believe that like the industry's going to get there over time, and that's just going to be one of the big unlocks of Web3 is just like how much more just like consumer choice and innovation there ends up being.
And how are you taking in account the user experience in your products? I mean, how do you feel like with the feedbacks? How do you put the feedbacks in what you're doing?
Oh yeah, well, that's a fun question to answer. I think we're all infrastructure companies, so probably we'll have similar answers here. But in terms of just like the infrastructure platform that we built out at Paxos, a lot of what we do is like we'll start by just looking at who are the companies in the space building like really world-class crypto experiences today. And so in like 2019, 2020, it was like Cash App, Robinhood were really like pushing the envelope of like crypto trading, crypto transfers. And then sort of like the next question was like, okay, what are the underlying capabilities that they built, and how can we surface those to other enterprise customers so that they can build similar applications for their users? And one of those, like, I think the really incredible things about like this conference today is just like there's so many of those building blocks being created for like Web3 wallets, which are inherently way more complex than Web2 products. And it's just like it's going to be really hard for even like an infrastructure company to just like build out all that infrastructure from scratch. But the pieces are there that you could just start to like wrap these things together and then just like make it so much easier for these large brands with huge customer bases to build incredible experiences for their users.
What about you, John?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we do is try to make it as easy as possible for our customers to make the best choices for their users. Of course, there's a lot of iteration there, and we're still figuring it out. One very direct way is in the push to like account abstraction previously have been typically with like a centralized, like just like a single solution. Now with something like ERC 4337, you have the development of like a decentralized mempool, which includes censorship resistance and things like that. And that's a net positive for the ecosystem, and it allows people to build and iterate tools very quickly. And it's not just like purely altruistic that we're doing it either. I mean, it is a better way to do business if we really want to create this future where everyone is able to create abstracted transactions and create better user experiences. We want to make it easy and robust, and you can't do that without taking serious consideration into elements of security that really also necessarily are influenced by privacy decisions.
Thanks, John. So before taking questions from the audience, I would like just you to summarize your thoughts about privacy versus convenience. Then maybe you can start.
Yeah. So I think both are very important. And I think that when it comes to enterprise customers and us moving forward, being compliant and helping customers be compliant with GDPR or ISDA or whatever like privacy policies there are out there is super important. I mean, I think as long as we get that right and keep up with regulation is ultimately the thing that pushes privacy forward, in my opinion, when it comes to Web2 companies. And like pushing that with them, helping them craft that, I think it's important.
Yeah, unfortunately, regulation is a lagging indicator of how far we've gone, which is unfortunate. For me, well, I think it's a false dichotomy. I think ultimately privacy is about allowing people to make decisions in their best interest with what they're doing, with their data and with their information. And as we increase convenience, as we make it easy for people to understand what they're doing, that enables us to be very clear with what decisions they're making regarding their privacy, and that in itself enhances privacy quite a bit, notwithstanding all these other great tools we have to be able to give them the choice of making a transaction fully private.
Thanks.
I would just add to that. I think convenience is a baseline expectation of any successful product, and so to me, that it's not really privacy versus convenience. It's like if you don't have convenience, you're not going to be around in business for a long time. And then privacy is more of a spectrum. You could imagine some use cases where it's the most important thing in the world, and and others where it's more negotiable. I think the key thing to keep in mind, though, is just that it's transparent to the user what data they're sharing and what they're getting in return for that decision.
Thanks a lot. Very great discussion. I would like you to give a huge applause to our speakers. And we will take several questions from you. So please, yes?
All right, so given the talk earlier on having privacy at the base layer like Aztec, curious your perspectives on if it's not at the base layer, where do you see that getting enforced? Do you see it at the wallets, at wallet infrastructure providers, at dApps? Where do you imagine kind of that data leak that comes out when everything's public, where does that stop? Does that stop at a wallet, first interaction? Are dApps forced to not? Yeah, who handles that?
So I think it's right now turning out to be the wallet layer, because that's the layer which the key lives, and therefore the encryption and decryption capabilities spawn from. And it looks like the wallet layer is also the layer that owns the user and has that UI UX experience with the user and holds the user attention, and therefore has the capabilities to actually have that transaction of clarity of what it's providing to the user. So, like, I mean, I do think it's probably the wallet layer in which it spawns out on.
Yeah, I actually think it's a shared responsibility in a way. The privacy preserving techniques on something like Ethereum layer 1 is often like too expensive and too inconvenient. And to be frank, with everything moving to, like rollups and alternative L1s, I actually think it's more appropriate for us to put the focus on privacy preserving rollups and applications. And for the responsibility for that privacy, there needs to be like a minimum amount within something like the rollup itself. And then it is the wallet's responsibility to really make it extremely clear to the user what their options are. And even to a certain extent, be a little bit opinionated about, where it directs the user.
What's the implementation of a truly private off-chain layer in particular? I think that would be the question. It's hard to evaluate without understanding.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the like privacy issue with blockchains is, that like blockchains have their security by, having the state of every account be valid, be able to be checked by every single other person looking at the network. So certainly doing things off-chain is preferable, especially if you're storing something like state. Unfortunately, that's also the thing that like you want to use a blockchain for in the first place. So, I see.
So something like, are you talking about like something like Ceramic, which encrypts and decrypts it on a user basis? What was it? Mixnet. Mixnet. So something like, what was that company? Nix, right? Nix or something like that. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go back to what I had said before, which is I think that, there are a lot of places where people are leaking information and don't know it. And I think every aspect of that, I don't know, couldn't tell you how much it actually would make a difference depending on the use case and what's going on. But I do think that privacy is, just like security, is a shared responsibility throughout like every little piece of the ecosystem. And it's, just one of the qualities of the systems that we build that is really important and that we need to keep in mind.
So if we think about, actually, Zach, you go ahead.
Thanks, Dan. One thing to add there is, just based on this discussion alone, there's so many just potential approaches in the space right now. And I think if you fast forward 5 years, a lot of this is probably over time going to become path dependent and based on like what are the use cases and the applications that get, meaningful traction, and then what techniques or solutions were they using at that time. And then that, tends to become at least like the default for one tech cycle, and then you'll see where things go from there.
So like I would just add like if it's like off-chain like use cases, I don't know about specifically transport layers, but if we take a look at the previous bull cycle for privacy, so to speak, it was Signal, right? Signal with or previously all messaging applications used to promise end-to-end encryption, but then eventually it only became Signal, and like that's kind of like an off-chain transfer of sorts.
Yeah, the discussion should be definitively continued. Thanks a lot for the question. I think we are running out of time.